I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
Your libido tends to decide based on who's going to kind of match up their core wounds with your core wounds so that you can play them out, and that's why you get so attracted. And instead, what I felt for this man was a man that I respected deeply, a man that believed in me more than any other man I'd ever met. And I was like, wow, this is the kind of man I want to be attracted to, but some reason I'm not.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you like what we're up to here at Together, please consider supporting our crowdfunding campaign at patreon.com/together. That's patreon.com/together. It turns out that producing a bi-weekly podcast and a magazine isn't cheap, and since we don't have any revenue yet, every penny counts. Now, to sweeten the deal, we're posting some really great bonus clips from today's interview on the Patreon page for anyone who donates just $2 or more. So it's not much, and you can find the link in our show notes. Now on to the show. Today's episode is a story about taking control of desire. Our couple, Bryan Franklin and Jennifer Russell, have been together for about 8 years, and during that time they tell us they have made some extraordinary strides in the area of controlling their own attention and attraction. I'll let them tell the story and describe what that means, and I'll let you decide whether what they're saying is credible. But let me give you some background to set the stage. Now, when Bryan and Jennifer first met, he was blown away by her, and she was barely noticing him. As he tells the story, he knew that he wasn't going to have what little attention she was giving him for long, so he made his move, and frankly, it seemed like he played it all wrong. He opened by telling her that he was going to be the most significant man that she met that week, which she just thought was audacious. Then he told her that he was an executive coach, which at the time she thought was pretty silly. And then he said to Google him, which she thought was arrogant. And then he said he'd give her the hot girl discount. You can imagine what she thought of that. So it wasn't going well. But for whatever reason, Jennifer did write down his info, and she did end up Googling him. And Bryan made good on the hot girl discount, which turned out to be free coaching for Jennifer. As she tells it, the coaching was far more impactful than she ever imagined it would be. And this audacious dork was slowly becoming the most significant man she had ever met. But then Bryan wanted to take the relationship to another level, and Jennifer wasn't interested because she simply wasn't attracted. And this is where we'll pick up the interview. We're cutting in at a point where Bryan and Jennifer have just met during a layover that Bryan orchestrated, and they've had dinner and a couple of drinks, and they've gone back to Bryan's hotel room.
So you were making out, but you weren't attracted to him?
Yeah, it was more like young, hormonal, like kind of liking the physical, like being turned on, but not necessarily being real attracted to him. Yeah. And, you know, him just kind of coming on strong and me not sure if I'm wanting to go there, but kind of going with it because my inhibitions are a little bit looser and I'm just a little more open. And I love who he is. Like, I've just loved the man that he was, but I wasn't actually all that attracted. You know, I went with it, but I left the room kind of the walk of shame going, oh, God, yeah. I don't know why I just did that.
She closed the door, and I did, like, fist pumps, and I was like, yes, it's happening. She likes me.
Yeah.
I was so excited.
Yeah. Totally. So we did cross that barrier, and I, forever in our relationship, that one went down as the not date that he had called a date that I called not our first date. What I call our first date was the Madonna concert, but...
Right. So he'd been so then he was planning, like, what can I do to take it to the next step?
Yeah.
Got the Madonna tickets, asked you.
Yeah.
And you agreed to fly out for Madonna, this time knowing it was a date.
This time knowing it was a date because, I mean, here's the funny part of the story. We're on the phone and he says, I've got these 2 tickets to Madonna. And then he says straight up, I just want you to know that if you get on the plane, you're going to sleep with me. So don't get on the plane unless you plan on sleeping with me.
Was that a pickup thing?
No, that wasn't a pickup thing. That I could feel a lot of tension in her from our makeout in Austin. I could feel her like she was into it, but not into it, not into it. And I didn't know she wasn't sharing what her internal experience was. So I didn't know what the conflict was. But it was like very much brakes, gas, brakes, gas, brakes, gas. And, I noticed that didn't feel good. And so I wanted like either kind of gas or brakes. And, it was early enough. I mean, I really liked her. We both were dating a lot of other people. I wasn't attached to it being one way or the other, but I was really wanting clarity, and wanting that kind of the part in me that is like activated by the potential of rejection, which is not a part of me that I particularly am like proud of or like love to express. I wanted that to be quiet so I could just show up and be present and be with her. And so for me, I was like, okay, I just want to let you know, this is a date. This is going to be sex. This is if you want to have sex with me, then come jump on the plane. If you don't want to have sex with me, just don't come. And that's fine.
Well, but then that could come out. I mean, from one perspective, you're clearly saying, look, this is where it's likely to go.
Yeah.
And this is the energy surrounding this trip.
Yeah.
And so you're stepping into this energy. On the other hand, it could sound like you're making an ultimatum.
Yeah, totally. And if I had to do it like today, if this was happening today, I would not do that.
Yeah.
I would not say that again.
He was really putting it down. It was a choice point for me. Because it was either you're going to go into romance, because now it's not even, a little drunk where you could get into it or out of it. This is like ahead of time saying, don't get on the plane unless you plan on sleeping with me. So I took a breath in that moment and went, who is this man telling me when I sleep with who and when and how? I get to decide that. And then I actually said that a second later. I decide when that's going to happen. He's like, yeah, you get to decide if you get on the plane or not. And so it was very matter of fact. And I thought to myself, Madonna tickets? Is that worth kind of prostituting myself for Madonna tickets? I was like, yeah, it's a chance of a lifetime. I'll hold my nose if I have to go to Madonna, just to have this incredible experience. I mean, I like the guy; he's amazing. So I got on the plane. I mean, I booked my tickets within minutes after we hung up.
So your decision was, I'll have sex with somebody I don't want to have sex with in order to go to Madonna,
which I had never done before. Not once.
And how did you feel about yourself for that decision?
Funny enough, I know I should say probably, shame on me, but I actually felt empowered in that moment. I've been very serious about my relationships. I've been, for the most part, serial monogamist, and going from one to the other and gone in very deep. With each one. I wasn't the kind of woman that had a lot of casual interaction.
Yeah.
And at that moment, there was something kind of thrilling for me about having this experience, flying all the way over, doing something I'd always dreamed of doing, and having this kind of Madonna ticket being the payment. It felt like a fair exchange, actually.
Yeah.
At the time.
Was there something attractive about the salaciousness of it?
I'm not sure if it was the salaciousness of it. It was me feeling like I got to decide on the basis of something I'd always wanted to do, which is see this. I mean, for 20 years or more, I'd been wanting to see this woman in concert. It was a little bit about my kind of journey through having a very different relationship to sex, where it isn't this taboo thing. It's actually this beautiful thing that two people can have, that we don't need to have this puritanical relationship with. Like, we can have a kind of freely empowered relationship with it.
Yeah.
So it just felt good. It felt like something fun and worth my while. And every interaction with him was so much more than I ever expected. And he blew my expectations every time. So I knew that if I went, I was going to have an incredible time ahead of me, even if I wasn't attracted. And I wanted to go to Madonna to really explore, could I be attracted to this man?
Mm-hmm.
I had decided that my picker had been broken. I had done 12 relationships, fairly serious ones, maybe more than 12, before meeting Bryan. And clearly, if I hadn't been with any of them more than a year or so, that I hadn't figured out relationship. If I couldn't figure out how to have any longevity more than a year or two,
Assuming on longevity is the important
assuming is important. You know,
Well, you definitely were wanting. when
I
you
was
graduated.
wanting to find a way to not repeat the same patterns over
Yeah.
and over.
Yeah.
And I realized I was choosing men based on my libido. Like, who was I attracted to, right? Because if you're not attracted, they're just your friend. Right? So it seemed like the logical way to choose. Like, friends are the ones you're not attracted to. The ones you're attracted to, your libido kind of decides. And your libido tends to decide based on who's going to kind of match up their core wounds with your core wounds so that you can play them out. And that's why you get so attracted. And instead, what I felt for this man was a man that I respected deeply, a man that felt more enlightened, a man that believed in me more than any other man I'd ever met. And I was like, wow, this is the kind of man I want to be attracted to.
Yeah.
But some reason I'm not. Probably because he wasn't at all like my father, right? So he didn't ping me in that same way of repeating my childhood traumas with my dad or with my parents.
Yeah.
And so that I was there to go to Madonna to kind of, well, let's see, let's explore.
Yeah. I can get that. It does sound empowering.
Yeah, so that trip, I flew in, and there we were at Madonna. I definitely made good on my side of the agreement, and we had
Very, very good.
we had the most amazing time together, and it was really the next day. I actually booked the whole weekend, not just come in for the concert and leave, but I came in on a Friday, left on a Sunday, and it was really the next day, sitting across from him at a cafe, and him really letting me into this vision of me that he saw, this potential of a woman that fits so beautifully into kind of a woman I'd always dreamed of being, but had kind of given up that I could ever be her. And he was just speaking into that again with that kind of relentless championing belief in me that I had never felt someone hold me at that the way that Bryan held me. And he had me that day. I mean, I started to fall in love. And it was 9 months of us kind of coaching and him trying to offer to have me come run his company before I finally said yes. But he very quickly, after a few months, said, I really would love for you to come run what I'm doing. You know, why don't you leave what you're doing? Come help me grow my business doing coaching and programs and transformational work. I think you'd be incredible and I need your help. And I was really, really resistant for about 9 months until I finally said yes. After seeing him in action, he had me come be a participant.
At what point did you realize you were attracted to him?
That was a month later in December. So if that non-date date was October, Madonna was November, and his birthday I flew in for was December.
So you were falling in love with him when he was speaking to you about who he sees you as being.
Yeah.
And then,
But not attract. Not
but you weren't being attracted to him.
not as much. Yeah.
And then you flew out for his birthday, and what shifted?
You know, I finally decided the thing I said earlier, which is that I was blown away by this man. I respected him so fully as a human being. I thought he was one of the most incredible humans I'd ever met. And if I just was having conversations with myself, like, if I can't be attracted to somebody that I think is one of the most extraordinary human beings, who's obviously totally loving me, wanting a relationship, then something's wrong with me. And that I get I got to figure out and have control over my own turn on, rather than being kind of at the whimsy or mercy of my circumstance to decide my own turn on. Yeah. So I just took it upon myself to decide to take back control of my turn on, to decide to place it where I wanted it. And it was a journey of really pulling that back into my body so that I now am a woman that walks through the world knowing that I can bring turn on anywhere when I want to.
Now, this is really, really powerful and edgy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, Bryan, do you think that that's possible for both genders?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, that in fact that has been true for me. This is something I just lucked into, discovered in college, that through how I direct my own attention, I can cultivate tremendous turn on or tremendous turn off for any person. That's
phenomenal. And the reason I say so, just to set the stage for the topic, is that this is the thing that 90% of the couples that I talk to, both as a divorce lawyer and now in this role, that I have as a podcaster and publishing this magazine is what people struggle with. The idea that a turn on and attraction changes.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the people that we're in love with we're not attracted to. And so there's a disconnect in our love and sex lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear a lot of people talking, frankly, about trying to become attracted to somebody that they're not attracted to because it's the right thing to do. And it invariably fails. It always fails.
Except for this one.
Except for this once and for one other couple I've talked to.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about the mechanics of it, and I'm curious if it's for real.
Yeah.
Oh, it's definitely for real. I mean, I could say the mechanics of mine first, and then you'll
Sure.
continue. But so first of all, I noticed that that turn on follows a story, and what we're really turned on to is kind of the story that we're telling ourselves about the person, and stories necessitate distortion, deletion, omission. And we do that through our attention. We pay attention to this thing, but not that thing. We pay attention to the way, this part of their body, but not that part about it. We pay attention. We sort of perfectionize the ones that we're turned on to in our minds. And so what I noticed is if I am deliberate about what I'm paying attention to, then sexual attraction and turn on is just always naturally arising for me. So we're in our eighth year now.
8th year.
And I'm absolutely as turned on to Jennifer, if not more, this morning as from that first time at Madonna.
Say the sentence again. If you pay attention to...
Well, what I do is every time I look at Jennifer, I look at the aspect of her which I find most attractive in that second.
Physically? Like you might look at her knee.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's attitudinal, like, oh, I find this attitude very attractive. It's whatever pings me sexually, whatever has a little bit of a pulse, I put my attention on that. And if something isn't attractive for me, I just allow that to be diffuse in my attention. And so I call it gardening. It's like turn on gardening, because it's not like you go out to the garden, you do a snip here and a water there, and that makes the flower grow in that moment. But if you continually garden and take care of it, then you're going to have this lush, flowering, amazing, fragrant space. And that's how it occurs for me.
You're saying something really lovely, which is that the experience of being human is that we're going to create fictions, fantasies, and emissions and stories around whatever that
Everything,
happens to objectively be.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do that, do it proactively.
Yeah, to create the story you actually want to live into.
What about the whole and completeness of a thing? Because what you just said is I only pay attention to the things I'm attracted to, and I allow the others to, I forgot the word you used, dissipate, I think.
Diffuse.
Diffuse.
I allow my attention.
Attention diffuse.
To be diffuse on those things, yeah.
What about the whole completeness of a thing?
Well, the whole completeness of a thing lives into that which you attend to. So it actually becomes what you have attention on. This is what there's a saying, what you put your attention on grows, and I think that's sort of true. But what you are, the way you shape your attention, creates the reality of the future. So the wholeness of the thing becomes the thing that you're putting your attention on, and then it's a virtuous cycle. It's not like I'm pretending to not see the parts of Jennifer I'm not attracted to. It's that I'm always in relationship to Jennifer in the context of being attracted. And so she is more and more attractive because, by the way, that's radiance producing for a woman. And, she's her...
So I get more radiant because I have this man. I mean, I've never been with a man quite like Bryan, that every minute is just oozing, radiating high levels of attraction for me. I mean, he is incredibly virile, sexual, turned on, sensual man. Every hour of the day, every minute of the day. I mean, as much as I could, I don't even know if I could keep up all the way, but to the degree to which I could, I feel like a very sexy, beautiful woman in his gaze, always, every day, every moment. And so there is a way where what he's saying is what's happening.
And it's rooted in the principle that it's our experience that is the foundation of our reality as people.
That's correct.
Right? That there's no objective attractive or unattractive Jennifer.
Right.
It's your experience of her, whether one way or the other.
Yeah, we are
It's
making the
relevant for
meaning. The elements in the reality are neutral. So if we're going to make the meaning, you might as well make the meaning you want.
Also, the more you pay attention to this stuff, or the more I've paid attention to that, the more I found that whatever I'm not attracted to is following storylines that are false.
Well, but I mean, everything that you are attracted to is following a storyline that's false too, right?
Well, it's yes, objectively, perhaps so, but it's not as if there's this underlying unattractive truth that I'm ignoring.
Right.
Is what I'm saying.
Right.
That wouldn't work.
But there's also not an underlying attractive truth that you're paying attention to.
Not inherently, no. It's just what is it? What are the stories that excite you, and how can you see those stories in the people around you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It occurred a little differently for me.
Yeah, it was different for Jennifer. Right.
Well,
but go ahead.
I want to stress test it a little bit, and then
do it,
because it sounds like yours is different, Jennifer.
Totally a different process. Yeah.
So, what if you were by nature a very straight person? And I don't know where you fall on the Kinsey scale, but what if you were a very heterosexual person and decided that the thing to do for some ulterior reason was to be sexually attracted to a man?
Yeah.
And because that, and I'm using that as an example because I think it would be a far reach for many people.
Yeah, yeah. That would be a far reach for me.
Okay, so then could you do it?
Yes.
And believe it for yourself?
Well, it's not just believe it. It would occur to me, once the process was complete, it would occur to me spontaneously as sexually attractive.
Right.
It's not like, I don't have to recode incoming data as attractive when it's not. Once you do the gardening, the flowers are just there for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
I mean, my guess is it would take, some number of years of daily practice.
And the daily practice would be when you ran across a particular man or men that you wanted to be attracted to, you would notice the things about them that gave you a sexual charge.
That's right.
And allow the others to
be diffuse.
Because
right now, if I have a moment like, whatever, a driver on the freeway catches my eye, and I turn towards the driver because it's sexy, and I realize it's a man with long hair. What I do now is go, oh, I'm not attracted to that. Ew, man, right. I'm not like that. That's not what gets me off. And then I pile on all this negativity to reinforce my current preferences.
Yeah.
So what I would do is just stop my mind from doing that and allow it to experience the initial spark longer.
So I guess the anti-gay movement could pick up on what you're saying.
Okay, good.
And is there something missing in that approach, or do you say it would? Do you believe it would apply?
I know categorically it works for me.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would work for everyone, but I think that the practice of creating your life experience by wielding your attention with some finesse, instead of just having your attention be haphazard all over the place wherever it wants to go, could absolutely benefit everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a panacea for the human experience?
I don't know about panacea. It's certainly a reliable path. If you look at, if you closely examine any of the sort of great Enlightenment masters, they're all working with some version of attention. Attention is the medium that they work with, and they have different ways of doing it. But it's all
for some. It's like be here now, right? That's about bringing all of your attention to the moment.
Yeah. Whether or Vipassana.
It's about letting go of cravings and aversions, which take you out of having your attention where you want. Like a lot of these practices.
Or Adidam and the study of free attention versus bound attention.
Meditation.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, that's how it. I lucked into this discovery when a woman I was really attracted to, I was dating, abruptly ended the relationship, and I was brokenhearted, and I was so tortured by my sexual desire for her because we couldn't be together. And I just thought, wow, why am I torturing myself? This is horrible. All I can think about are all the things that I think are most attractive about her. And every thought was like a razor blade on my heart. And I was like, well, is that the truth of it? Or are there also things that weren't as attractive? Oh, it turns out there were. And if I just considered those and more in balance, then my pain threshold started going down. And about 2 weeks later, I had a total friend vibe with her, and I could hang out with her. She could be in a bikini, and there was just nothing there for me.
So he did the same thing, but in reverse.
Yeah.
Noticed the things that were unattractive.
Yeah.
Put all of his attention there. Allowed the things that were attractive to be diffused.
Just till I had like a normal relationship with her,
Yeah.
not repulsed or attracted.
I'm finding myself wondering why any of it matters. Why does it matter which one you choose to be attracted to one thing or not? Why not allow your attention to go where it may?
I wanted to choose based on my values. I had a lot of natural, immediate attraction for Jennifer, and here we are starting this relationship. I want our relationship to be passionate and sexy and wonderful, and I want her experience of me sexually to be like, like a fire hose of light. And that's because those are my values. That's the experience I want to have and the one I want to create. So that's why it matters to me.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. And that was his access point to having that passionate, relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Through his attention, through our attention, but
yeah.
So how does it go for you?
It was a little bit different. That night in December when I was trying to really get down to the bottom of it, I decided to really feel into what was it about Bryan that had me not attracted. Was it just like a physical looks thing, or was there something actually underneath that? And for me, it was feeling into some of the neediness that I can often feel from men in general, where they're really needing your attention. They're needing us as women to choose them and to find them attractive. And they're needing and wanting that kind of sexual exchange. And with that kind of neediness, where there's a lot of grasping and craving and holding, I found it hard to find the attraction. So I realized it was way less about how he looked and way more about wanting to heal some of this neediness.
In him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that the greatest man I'd ever met, that the chasm between me and actually finding him and having him be my partner was this healing, this neediness, then I just decided that night, well, I can take my turn on and actually bring it into my own body and decide how to cultivate it on my own and be in service to healing that. How else would I want a woman than to liberate him from the areas where his attention was arrested? His attention was bound and stuck around sexuality when I met him, so many men are, where they've had heaped on so much guilt and shame around their desires and being made wrong their whole lives about most of them. And yet still having the desire and having that schism between wanting something and feeling shameful about wanting it. I wanted to heal that in him, liberate him from that, such that I could have this partnership with an extraordinary man. And so it really put me on a path of using my body and my relating with him as a path of his healing and as a path of my liberation of my own turn on. So for me, that was my storyline, and I knew I was in love with the man he was. And so I knew if I could learn how to have my own turn on and really cultivate it in my own body and decide, right? So for me, it was about an internal decision of when to be turned on, that it was kind of like an empowerment story for me around my own sexuality, because so many relationships later on, that ebbs and flows. So if you don't learn how to manicure and bolster and have your own kind of sense of turn on, then you are doomed to have the kind of relationship that 99% of every couple you'll ever meet will say, which is it's hot at the beginning, then it kind of tapers, and then there's no passion at the end. Could be great love. So I knew that this was something I wanted to learn how to do, because I didn't want to be one of those stories. And so for me, it was about learning what made me turned on in my own being so I could self-source that and bring it to anyone at any time.
And the access for you was noticing that he needed to be healed?
That got me on the path of deciding that I could learn how to self-source.
First, you wanted to heal him.
Yes.
And you realized, the only way I can really dive in and heal him is if not only I'm in love with him,
yes.
but I'm also attracted to him.
Yes.
So then you did the internal inquiry of, well, where does my attraction come from?
Yes.
And you realized, it's sourced by me, actually, fundamentally. And therefore I have control of it because it's not some objective outside force. It's my own force.
Right.
Okay, so once you realized that,
yeah.
what was the switch, or where was the kernel of the thing that allowed you to then be able to source it? What was that?
Yeah, it felt like a really deep exploration of my own body's wisdom, kind of a deeper wisdom than any of the kind of intellect that lays on top of your body. For me, it was an exploration of feeling like I have these little dials, and that if I could do something really small to have me feel a little bit more turned on, that even if it's little, like maybe it's like paying attention to what I'm observing that I like, or maybe it's putting on some article of clothing that makes me feel sexy. Maybe it's doing these little things. If I could do it a little bit, then I knew that if I could capture like a 1 or a 2 on the scale of this dial of turning myself on, that a 10 is available to me.
If you can get to a 1.
If I can get to a 1, then there's no reason I can't learn how to get to a 10.
So is this available for any human? Can you become attracted to any human?
Yes. I think if I have a love for their being first. Often they say like the way to a man's heart is through his sex, and a way to a woman is through her feelings. Her heart, way to her sex is through your heart. I think if I have my heart online, then I can self-source that turn on. Absolutely.
One of the things we learned in this observation as we were
playing with this
at the same time, and I remember her saying on my birthday, by the way, I'm not very sexually attracted to you, a little bit repulsed, but I'm going like full ahead steam anyway. And I said, I think you're crazy for trying that. But, so often, just to be stereotypical, men's sexual attraction comes from a visual field, which is why the paying attention visually is so effective at changing what I'm attracted to. But for a woman, it's often different. It's often an energetic experience. Mm-hmm. And another thing that Jennifer would do is once she identified the energy that she would find attractive, and then the ways that my neediness or my low sexual self-esteem at the time was cramping that energy, she would figure out what she could do energetically, mm-hmm. what pull she could hold, or what way she could be that had me kind of naturally respond in a way that was going to be more natural for her attraction. And so she'd polarize me into a spot that was more attractive for her, which then relaxed her kind of willpower around her to turn on, and it would erupt into a really hot, episode, which then every one of those made the next one easier. All the while afterwards actually sharing with me why that was and teaching me the language of the energy of what was attractive and not attractive, which allowed me to locate like in my somatic body and my feelings and my emotions where this neediness actually lived, and to start to relax it and to disbelieve it and to not require attention from women in order for me to feel okay about myself.
It's an extraordinary personal development course that you guys were doing one-on-one with each other.
Yeah.
And really powerful in that regard. It also, however, sounds like, and on some level you're saying, we're two people who are just not physically attractive, but we've globbed on attractiveness for one another. Is that how it lives for you?
No. No. After I was able to really, in an empowered way, self-source my life force, my life essence, and my turn-on, and the minute I kind of got into the whole neediness thing and started to kind of work on that with him, all of a sudden the floodgates opened, and I was just head over heels attracted. You could hardly get us out of the bedroom. I mean, and that was authentic. So I went from not attracted to all the way attractive. It wasn't like I'm having to kind of force it every time or make up that I'm attracted. Once I figured out I could have the dial, I set it to attraction, and I've been attracted ever since.
Full blown.
Now,
Yeah.
and you answered this question before, but in the new context, I want to ask it again.
Sure.
What's the difference between somebody that you're attracted to just when you meet them physically and somebody where you've turned the dial up?
Well, the difference. To me, that is the difference, is the dial. But if I'm attracted to them, then from the beginning, usually it's how it feels is that there's some kind of imago match, some kind of life story that I'm drawn to play out with that person. And so I know that there'll be some kind of reciprocal interlocking structure of us playing out our deepest hopes and dreams and our deepest pains and wounds.
Now, that's interesting. The imago approach is usually talking about a relationship dynamic. And you seem to be saying that the only type of physical attraction you have is one that's rooted in a potential relationship sync up.
I think that psychologically that's how we're wired.
So when you see some famous movie star take off his shirt, that's wired around a potential imago dynamic?
Well, it depends. If I just think there's a nice looking man, that's one thing. If I'm like pining for the man, like I'm like the fangirl and I've got the posters and I'm following around and watching every movie, that's very different than going, wow, he's handsome. I mean, that's attractive, right? So there's a different, like the level of draw, I think is directly proportional to the parts of you that are being pinged by a dynamic that you might be able to play out. I think that plays into our attraction a lot more than we realize.
Is there somebody that you find attractive and just want to sleep with who doesn't have all that emotional, conceptual layering?
Absolutely, and usually my interest in that is directly proportional. So I've got like a mild interest in it.
Yeah.
Like I could take it or leave it. It's attractive.
Yes.
Like I'm being pinged in terms of like the aesthetics of enjoying how he looks, but my degree of feeling like I'm glued to it and needing it and wanting it, that to me is tied more into the kind of reciprocal imago match.
I get your point. And
Right.
is that a gender distinction? Like, do you think a man might have an easier time?
Yeah, I think men more blur that. I think men get more attracted to a wider range, where it isn't just about who's going to be the imago match. I think that most men are just attracted to women that they find beautiful because they're trying to heal this part in them that wants to feel needed and chosen.
Yeah. The match is more, to me, archetypical. I think a man is more likely to disconnect from their own turn-on in pursuit of sex.
Sexual gratification. Right?
Because there's also something, it means something to the man's ego that it happens or doesn't happen. And so actually they're likely to disconnect from the fact that, let's say it's not a great imago match and there's not a lot of natural chemistry, but there was a spark and the man just keeps pursuing it and they become attached to the outcome because it means something about their ego and they're no longer connected to their turn-on, which, by the way, is why that sex isn't going to be very hot for the woman. Because he's not actually in contact with his own turn-on. It's just mechanics at that point, serving your egoic need to say that you could have achieved this outcome, and therefore that means something positive about me and my status. That's my sense of it anyway.
Well, that's it for the Bryan and Jennifer episode, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more from these two, we're posting a couple of bonus clips on the Patreon site. Now, one of these clips is a full-length episode about conflict. These two, just as with all couples, are no strangers to conflict in their relationship, but they have some very effective and very unique approaches to working on it and to deepening their relationship through that conflict that I think are fantastic and I think you'll really enjoy listening to. The second clip is their meeting story, the one that I alluded to in the intro to this program. It's really funny and it makes Bryan look like a complete dork. So if you're interested in hearing that, definitely go check it out. And Bryan and Jennifer are also about to lead a couples retreat. Now you can find out more about that through the website that they've set up for the retreat. And here's the URL. It's www.recodelive.com/evolving-love-retreat. I'll spell that out for you. Recode Live is recodelive.com/evolving-love-retreat. If you liked what you heard on our show, please review our show on iTunes or consider donating to our Patreon campaign. You can find the links for both of those on our show notes. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us via one of our platforms. Our website is www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both @together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. Our producer is Charlene Goto. Our web designer is Courtney Munna. Our art director and my one and only is Aubrey Pick. At this very moment, she's flying to New York, where she's going to be a high-powered photographer for a week, and I'm going to miss her dearly. Thanks once again to my guests, Bryan and Jennifer. Guys, that retreat sounds pretty amazing. I wish I could be there. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.